Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. All of the content contained in the following hour programming is meant for rational human use only. If you are not a rational human being or believe all human beings to be irrational-minded creatures, this program may cause you irreparable harm. While the hosts of the show make no claim about what it means to be a rational human-minded person, they do somewhat infer that irrational human behavior is caused largely by external environmental factors. This may or may not include and is not limited to some of the following catalysts for irrationality: political persuasion, religious zeal, sports team affinity, media consumption, parasite proclivity, occupational brainwashing, and philosophical cherry-picking. If you feel you suffer from any of these mental roadblocks, proceed with caution. Then, if nothing bad happens right away, proceed with a little less caution, then a lot less, until you can abandon caution altogether. And finally, there you are, high-stepping past piles of rational doubt, skipping wildly across fields lush with new discovery, and are sanely, rationally running naked through the garden of uninhibited thinking while singing at the top of your lungs, This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good evening, Kirsten.
Good evening, Justin. It's so great to be back here yet again with more science. It just happens all the time. We're on the cusp of science, but science has happened. It's happening. It's just all science. Science. I love
Right
it.
now, while we're talking about the latest things happening in science,
Yes.
there's new things happening in science that we're not covering because they're just being released.
I know. There's just so much. So much. But we try to do our best. We do our best to get the most fun out of the science that we find during the week. So for today's show, I brought a bunch of science news, stories about gamers beating computers, solar flares, and a bit of artificial intelligence. What do you have?
What do I have? I have what you are as a child is what you are as an adult. Our inner child is always there with us. So I also have the Earth, a couple of winners. We were talking about this a while ago, like maybe what creatures might actually benefit from global warming. There's a couple here from a somewhat recent study, and I've got some good star watching tips for the following week, and some other stuff if my Google works.
Your Google, yes.
If my Google.
Specifically your Google.
Your Google seems to be working fine. My Google, I think, is busted.
I take care of my Google. That's why. Allie, what stories did you bring?
I have one about a non-existent triceratops and another about how culture wires the brain.
Interesting. I know people have been talking recently about how computers might be rewiring the brain, so it's good to just start at the basics. Let's talk about the culture. Yeah. All right, so let's just head this right off with solar flares. There was
Huge ones.
Yeah, big solar flare that a couple of them that came right at us. We should be having one right now, actually. That August 5th is today here right now where we're recording, and there's a solar flare that should be affecting us right now. But
Wow.
the first solar flare of the new solar season, of this new solar cycle, which I believe is number 24. We had number 24, I think. It was set off on my birthday, August 1st. It was very exciting. I was
Happy birthday!
Hey, thank you. I was very excited by the news of a giant solar flare on my birthday. Some reporters were calling it a solar tsunami. That there was think there was some sunspot activity that may have triggered a magnetic solar tsunami, a big giant magnetic flare over the surface of the sun, which then triggered this giant solar outburst, which basically created a bunch of energy from the sun, a bunch of particles that came shooting at us. And it took about 2 days for those particles to reach us. August 3rd was the first day. End of August 2nd, August 3rd was when we started feeling the impact of the first solar flare for this cycle. From spaceweather.com, they said Earth's magnetic field is still reverberating from the CME, coronal magnetic emission impact of August 3rd, which sparked auroras as far south as Wisconsin and Iowa in the United States.
Wow.
And and if people are looking, if you're in Norway, Denmark, high latitude sky watchers, be keeping an eye out. If you're watching live right now, you might see some increased auroral activity right now. Some photographers, Michael Tournay, he said the whole sky over northern Quebec filled with green and purple. I couldn't decide where to point my camera, so he just took out his wide-angle lens. One of the interesting things about the solar flare, I got a whole... Ooh, yes. The solar flare, I got a whole bunch of questions after seeing people saw that this solar flare was coming. People were like, is this going to be the beginning of the 2012 destruction of the Earth? Is this doom? Is this solar flare the harbinger of our doom? I hardly think so. I really hardly think so. I mean, it could be causing your Google problems, Justin, but I really doubt it.
Yeah, to be a harbinger of doom these days, you really need to get in line.
Get in line.
Got enough of them. There's a whole list. Get back of the line. No cutting to the front.
That's right. No cutting. No cutting. So it's really interesting. They do think they saw some really interesting solar sunspot activity, and I found some really interesting information on the solar conveyor belt and sunspots and their magnetic fields on the SOHO website. And the SOHO website is www.nascom.nasa.gov, and we'll put the links on the website in the show notes. But the SOHO website talks about the conveyor belt and how the sunspot cycle, how they're trying to figure out how the 11-year sunspot cycle works and how the sunspots possibly trigger these magnetic events that cause the sun to just burst energy out of itself. So they've used the SOHO sun monitoring solar and heliospheric observatory, this monitoring device that they've got up in space, to actually monitor the activity of the sun and what's going on. And what they're finding is that there's a meridional circulation. So along the meridian of the sun, there's this circulation, a massive flow pattern within the sun that transports hot plasma that's near the surface from the solar equator to the poles and then back to the equator again in the deeper layers of the convection zone. And so this is something really similar. So if you think about the oceanic convection that we have here on Earth, where we have these in the northern and southern hemispheres, you have water flow of cooler to warmer water, and these conveyor belts that actually move water around here on Earth. Very similar stuff going on the sun. They say the flow's really slow. It's about 20 to 30 miles per hour, so not very fast. The structure and strength of the meridional flow is believed to play a key role in determining the strength of the sun's polar magnetic fields, which then determines the strength of the sunspot cycles. But they haven't really figured out what the actual link is. They know there is a link, but they don't know exactly what the link is yet. They analyzed a whole bunch of magnetograms between 1996 and 2009 and measured the latitudinal profile of this conveyor belt, this convection flow, and its variations over a single solar cycle by tracking the motions of small-scale magnetic flux concentrations. which are carried away by the meridional flow like leaves on a river. It's nice. Just imagine that. Very hot leaves. They found an average flow that is poleward at all latitudes up to 75 degrees, which suggests that it extends all the way to the poles. They also found that the flow was fastest at the sunspot cycle minimum than at the maximum, and substantially faster on the approach to the current minimum than it was at the last solar minimum. And it poses new constraints on the models that they're coming up with to try and link this conveyor belt activity with actual sunspot activity. How does the magnetism actually lead to the sunspots and vice versa? And how does that affect the solar outbursts that could potentially affect our technology and our electrical grid here on Earth? Because if the sun outbursts enough, historically, it's put a few satellites offline. It's actually affected our communication systems, and we're looking at potentially having a very dynamic sunspot cycle over the next 11 years. So we'll see. It's yet to be seen. I think it's very interesting. So SOHO, I will keep an eye on it and try and let you know if they learn anything new and exciting.
Yeah, that would be a pretty wicked hit. The sunspot taking out satellite communications, GPS. Oh my goodness! I mean, my little Droid phone that I haven't bought yet wouldn't work with the Sky Map if I didn't have the GPS.
Right. Exactly. There's so much that we rely on technologically. This particular outburst from the sun is, not powerful enough to actually do any damage to electrical grids, to the communication satellites, any of the things that we rely on. It was a nice start. Gave us some nice auroral activity, but it hasn't really mucked things up very much. So we'll wait and see for future outbursts, other big ones. And we have about 2 days of warning between actually seeing the pictures. Yeah, 2 days to maybe
2 days
do
is plenty
something.
of time to get the duct tape and tinfoil out and cover the windows.
Yeah, well, if you know it's coming, you can potentially power down some of the satellites for a short period of time. Just have a short blackout so that you can power them back up again, and they won't be damaged if they're kind of powered off.
We should do that as a test. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Everybody,
we're just going to turn things off for a little while, okay? Global silence.
Wow. There'd be chaos immediately. People rioting in the streets. My cell phone doesn't work.
But I'm very excited about, this is the onset of the solar cycle, and people have been talking about, it's going to be coming and it's going to be big. So, and everyone's talking about 2012, and I know we have to wait and see. It's an 11-year cycle, so it's going to go up, 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 and then down, down, down. And just can't wait to see how much activity we get out of it over the next few years. Yeah. Justin, what you got?
Oh, what do I have here? Okay, here we go. Let's do this one story that I have. Personality traits observed in children are a strong predictor for their behavior later on as adults. This is a study by researchers at the University of California, Riverside, and Oregon Research Institute and University at Oregon. The study is going to appear later on in the journal Social, Psychological, and Personality Science, which is a quarterly publication. Basically, they used data from old studies from back in the 60s of approximately 2,400 elementary school children in Hawaii. So this is the study where they had the teachers in the classroom asking and observing, taking lots and lots and lots of very thorough notes about the kids' behavior. And they went back and they interviewed people and found that tried to make, just to see what those people turned out like later on in life. What they discovered was surprising, says Christopher S. Nave, a doctoral candidate at UC Riverside, lead author of the paper. On the contextual independence of personality, teachers' assessments predict directly observed behavior after 4 decades. We remain recognizably the same person, Nave says. This speaks to the importance of understanding personality because it does follow us wherever we go across time and across context. That's wild. So here was some of the things that they'd identified and the resulting human being that came from it. Youngsters identified as verbally fluent, defined as unrestrained talkativeness, tended as middle-aged adults to display interest in intellectual matters, speak fluently, try to control situations, and exhibit high degrees of intelligence. Children who were rated low in verbal fluency by their teachers were observed as adults to seek advice, give up when facing obstacles, and exhibit an awkward interpersonal style. Children rated as highly adaptable, defined as coping easily and successfully with new situations, tended as middle-aged adults to behave cheerfully, speak fluently, and show interest in intellectual matters. For those who rated low in adaptability as children were observed as adults to say negative things about themselves, seek advice, and exhibit an awkward interpersonal style. Those who were rated as impulsive as adults were inclined to speak loudly, display a wide range of interest, and be talkative. Those who were rated as low on impulsivity were observed as adults to be fearful or timid and keep others at a distance and express their insecurities. Children whose teachers rated them as having a tendency to self-minimize. Humble kids, humble children. I don't have many of these around. Minimizing their own importance and never showing off as adults were likely to express guilt, seek reassurance, say negative things about themselves, and express their insecurity. Those who were ranked low at self-minimizing were observed as adults to speak loudly, show interest in intellectual matters, and exhibit condescending behavior. We think that personality resides within us, says Nave. It's a part of us, a part of our biology. Life events still influence our behaviors, yet we must acknowledge the power of personality in understanding our future behaviors as well. Further study will expand knowledge that one personality has important outcomes associated with it and help us understand how personality is related to behavior, as well as examine the extent at which we may be able to change our personality. That's pretty wild to think that 40 years later, those traits that the little person was exhibiting stuck through a lifetime.
Right.
That to me is pretty amazing. I think I would have guessed that there could be a lot wider range of change going on there. That it wouldn't be like, certainly I could see somebody staying as a child, having certain inclinations and that sticking with you, but to have it have been across that wide of a spectrum where that many individuals were looked at later and were found to have those same traits carry over. I would not have expected.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to say there is a certain amount of just general personality that a child gets early on, and that sticks with them, whether or not they're, like you said, the general traits of, are they outgoing, are they quiet, are they, what are the traits? Are they more likely to seek people that they don't know, so novelty seeking? I could definitely see how those traits would be things that would stick with an individual and would be very basic, very, very basic parts of their personality that wouldn't change so much over time. I mean, you could definitely, there are days on which things change, but overall, yeah, people pretty much stay the same in terms of the basics.
Yeah. I guess they do. I thought when we were growing up, I don't know. I guess there isn't a whole lot of personality evolution taking place, though. I don't know. It does kind of amaze me that we could be that locked into personality traits.
Yeah. Well,
So somebody on the forum was just saying, why not pick? Yeah, we should start picking career paths.
when kids are really young.
Yeah, just get them on that. You know what? You're not very analytical. You're just not. You're not going to make it as perhaps this or that career. We're going to keep you out of finance. We're going to pick you something. You're pretty creative. We're going to get you into art class now, and we're gonna skip some of the other stuff. I don't know what you would do. I don't know how you could really determine what would be a good career from that.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I don't know. I haven't read the study or read what you're reading from myself, so I can't really criticize the study so much. But studies like this that are very generalizing. I mean, it just there's a lot. I'm just wondering what they've left out.
What does that mean too for like self-help books and self-help programs and stuff? I mean,
It's a waste of money.
It's a waste of money.
If you're not good with money, find somebody to manage it for you. Don't touch it. I mean, whatever.
Exactly.
If you're not a very social person, get into computers. You know, just avoid people. I think that's what it is. Figure out your niche and roll with it. Be happy with it. Don't try to help yourself. Ugh.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
Well, the problem is, though, that has been what is actually very nice about this is that it shows that our personalities are somewhat inherent to who we are, to us.
Yes.
And one of the biggest affronts and hugest movements in psychology came from Freud and trying to make it so that anybody who was not doing the social norm was in some way doing something malignant or had a disorder. Like if you didn't fit in and weren't doing the mainstream thing and sort of part of the oceanic thinking of your peers, then you were somehow maladjusted and it was something that needed correction.
Right.
You know, to where, I think it shows that, no, there isn't a correct way to be a human being, and it does stick and stay with us.
Yeah, and there's so much that we're learning about how genes are related to personality. I mean, the genes that you are born with and how those interact with your epigenome and, you know, and how your environment influences you. I mean, the genes are the basic level of who you are, and the genes influence how the neurons in your brain start out connecting to each other. What is the initial formation of your brain? What is it? You know, how do things start working from the first place? You know, there's definitely going to be environmental influence that's going to modulate that, but it's not going to change the basic architecture. So, you know, so I think there's definitely a certain amount of determinism in there as to who you are from, you know, what you've got when you start out in life. Allie, what'd you bring? Tell me about dinosaurs.
Yeah, I have a story about how the Triceratops doesn't really exist.
No. Triceratops exists.
No,
It's my favorite dinosaur.
Yeah, it's really sad. It's like Pluto.
I thought it was the other one that didn't exist. Now they're getting rid of Triceratops?
Yep.
Yeah, Triceratops. They're finding that Triceratops is actually, or they now believe that it's the baby version, the juvenile version of a Torosaurus. So, yeah, it looks completely different because it has 3 horns. It has a 3-horned skull, whereas the Torosaurus has 2 large holes through their skull and a much bigger frill. But it's just they're finding that they now believe that it's just that the morphology changes a lot as the dinosaur grows up, and that all this whole species that they thought was one species was just the younger version of this other species, which is a lot more rare actually. The Torosaurus is a lot more rare.
So it ends up increasing the numbers of the Torosaurus. Actually,
yeah, it does. But they're also a bit confused as to why there are so few Torosauruses compared to Triceratops that they found. But they think maybe it's just a high mortality rate.
Yeah.
You know, that they didn't all grow up.
I think they need to get rid of Torosaurus.
Yeah,
Keep
Just
Triceratops.
make it the Triceratops also.
because we love
the
Triceratops.
As we know, it doesn't even really. It's just a baby.
It does exist. It's just a baby. Baby dinosaurs. The Triceratops. They're so cute.
Yeah, I wonder if there's going to be an outpouring of people complaining if they try and get rid of the Triceratops moniker. You know, I mean, with Pluto.
It's a huge childhood dinosaur. Like, people are going to be really sad. I mean, it's like one of the big 3. There's like T-Rex, Triceratops, and
Brontosaurus.
Which doesn't exist.
But
Oh yeah, that's
There's
right.
no Brontosaurus.
All my favorite ones. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think this is one of the people involved in this is Jack Horner, and he was involved in another study involving these dome-headed dinosaurs that has that I interviewed a guy out of Berkeley about it. That basically, they're finding all over the place now that they're looking at these dinosaurs over again, that they reanalyze and they're like, oh, well, this one kind of it looks like this one, and this makes sense, and so they're like dinosaurs are dropping like flies.
Yeah, they're finding that there's actually way less diversity than they thought there was. Yeah. Because it's actually just a bunch of younger versions. All these ones they thought were different species are just different life stages. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They're finding that there was a lot more. Well, that the dinosaurs just grew differently than we're used to observing in today's world. They had sort of like more stages, so that other horns could be developed into the well into the life cycle, or well into the into the teen and years or whatever it would be. So as they matured, new horns continue, and that's how they grew so big. Is that they didn't apparently have a mechanism to stop growing. They didn't have something that
because they were so big. Yeah, because it says here some of the skulls that they found that are the juvenile Triceratops are roughly the size of footballs, whereas others are the size of a small car, and that's still the Triceratops. So they definitely got really big, and it makes sense why they thought that those were the older ones, because there's such a huge difference in size still when they're growing, but then they just keep growing to become an even giant.
And it might be what kills dinosaurs. It might be why there's so few of those older ones, because you get it to a certain size ratio, and that right there could kill you.
Well, it's the size ratio, but then the energy that's required to maintain that size ratio. So the larger you get, the more food you need, right. and the harder it is to find all that food. So it's very possible that you're really only going to have the strongest individuals. And if there's high competition, you probably find that there's a big decrease at life stages that start to get really big.
But I wonder, see, that's the thing, though. It's like, why would that limit the larger dinosaur? It seems like they could make there be a lot less diversity of other life forms if they were eating that much around them. But that would be just a competition. I think they actually started to cook themselves internally. You look at like an apatosaurus or something that large creates a tremendous amount of internal heat. And once they get up to a certain size, that's sort of like the breaking point for where if they got any bigger,
right.
there would be an oven in the middle cooking internal organ.
Interesting. It's an interesting idea. I don't know that I've ever heard that, but
it's some random. It's somebody in physics was explained that to me once.
But could they have evolved to the point of getting to be cooking? Like, wouldn't they just not have reproduced then? I don't know. That would have to be a really
because they keep growing, because there would be no mechanism to stop growing. The dinosaur, they could reproduce, they could do everything like that, but as that dinosaur keeps growing throughout as it gets older, at some point it becomes so large that it begins cooking its internal organs because it's creating so much heat and pressure on the inner core.
Yeah. Just because there's so much muscle mass on the outside, and then the organs are big to accommodate all of that, and it could definitely be an upper limit.
Yeah, and I think that we may be soon going to be encountering that here in the United States.
Oh, really?
People don't start watching the waistline.
Yeah, there's a dramatic increase in waistlines in the United States over the last few years. That is true. Although I don't think we're going to have a problem. I don't know. We're not going to have a problem like Triceratops. Maybe.
Oh, well, they found this is in Utah. They were looking at fossils in a fossil find there, and they found this small predator dinosaur, and they found these things that look like claw marks on these burrow holes. And what they think it is, they think it matches up with the claws of one of the predators that was in the area, which was like a 3-foot dinosaur that was trying to claw out some burrowed mammals, because there's like a gerbil type size thing and some small mouse mammal looking thing.
Poor thing.
Trying to dig them out of the ground. And I don't know. I think that's why we love chickens so much as mammals, right? Because that's the closest related living creature to the T-Rex. So maybe we love chicken because it's just like
our little dinosaur. It's like
karma. It's like our turn.
You're my little dinosaur.
Yeah,
that's right.
You like eating mammals? You liked it when they were little tiny little mammals? You like doing that? You like eating mammals? we're going to create chicken farms. We're going to make you one of the main food sources for the whole.
Awesome. Hey, gamers, you win again. There's a paper in Nature this week that actually contains in the author credits on the paper, the online gaming community, foldit.org.
Yay, Foldit!
Yay, Foldit! Yeah, this is exciting. We reported on Foldit a few years ago. Justin, you were the one who actually brought this story to everyone's attention on Twis.
Yeah, I went in and played it too. I was all folding proteins and doing the thing for a while.
Yeah, we had a Twis team up there, didn't we?
Yeah.
Well, there were people very active in the community. I kind of fell out of playing the game. I was interested in for a while, but then the ADD kicked in and I had to go elsewhere for my entertainment. But foldit.org, Foldit, the whole idea behind the game is that it uses humans' ability to recognize patterns to be able to help solve the problem of folding proteins. And there's a Rosetta at home, which is a distributed computing effort that kind of has been getting proteins to their basic formation, but was never quite all the way there. And the distributed computing and the algorithms that they were using just couldn't quite figure out the final formations of the proteins and how the proteins would get there. It just wasn't quite able to do it. So they started the Foldit game to be able to get people power behind the problem. And they're actually finding that people are doing a great job. And in fact, they say this article in Ars Technica by John Timmer, he says that Foldit, so you start out with a protein that's almost to where it's supposed to be, but things are a little bit out of place. And it says that some of the top players, some were better at making the big adjustments that were needed to get near an energy minimum, while others enjoyed the fine scale tweaking that was needed to fully optimize the structure. And Foldit also enables team competitions, and so different team members could handle different parts of the folding task that they were most able to do, most interested in doing, most capable of. And that has really, really paid off. And it's, I guess, this idea of using people for figuring out, getting past the threshold where algorithms run short is starting to be picked up by scientists in lots of other areas, including astronomy. So,
and it is a great example of a sort of groupthink effort because wherever this sort of puzzle is or this model is, you can make some adjustments to it that improve it over the last position because there's like a point scale where it's getting closer to something cool.
Yeah.
And somebody else can pick it up, do a bunch of adjustments to it and save it. And then you can go back and build off of that again. If you got 20 people, 30 people all working on the same one, it moves really fast. It moves really quick, and you can get you can make a lot of progress on one of those pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Foldit, are they still out there? Foldit, they're still doing it. That's awesome.
It's FOL. I said .org, and I'm totally wrong. It's fold.it.
Fold.it.
Fold.it, and you can download the app to your computer. You can do it you can play online. It's a great game. I'm just excited because this is the first paper that Foldit as a community has been cited as one of the authors on the paper as being very involved in this process. And who knows, maybe there's going to be a Nobel Prize out there for some Foldit team figure out something very important. You never know. It's very exciting. Have we been going for about a half an hour? I did not even look at the clock to see what time we started. I have no idea.
Are we ready to go on the air? Because I'm ready to do the stories for real this time.
For real. I think it's about time to take a very short break, and when we come back, we'll have more science for reals.
For reals.
That's right.
Behold the Oklahoma plain, planted with a single strain, a blanket spun from golden grain, 1 trillion stalks of wheat. On every stalk, a perfect head. The kernels keep the combines fed, then off to manufacture bread, so everyone can eat.
together.
And that's Monty Harper. Monty is I put a link on Twis.org. He's trying to raise money for his new science music album. He's trying to really produce it, go into a professional studio, and do a great job. And he's on Kickstarter trying to raise money. He's got some neat levels for donations for people who donate towards his goal of creating his album. But at Twis.org I think it's 2 weeks ago, I put up a link to his video and his Kickstarter stuff. So if you go there, you can possibly be able to, you can check it out, see if you are interested in donating and help make his science music CD dream a reality. I believe it goes until mid-August. He's only got a couple of weeks left of fundraising, and he's doing pretty well. But he still he needs more. He needs more money. He's working on it. He needs more money to make a good CD. So if you're able, it'd be great if you could help out.
By hand, it grows a mix of wheat out here, and when the weather turns austere, a strain or two may persevere enough to meet demand. Ain't it beautiful? Ain't it clever? Ain't it just about the best news ever? A farmer feeds his family's needs when man and nature work together. Back in Oklahoma, disaster in the fields. Farmers ponder pesticides while Russian aphids cut their yields. But scientists have a weapon to help us beat this pest. The USDA Wheat Gene Bank has more than 50,000 strains to test. And they find resistance built right into a plant from our Afghan farmer friend. They cross it with...
And we're back. This is This Week in Science, if you just tuned in. And we have lots more for reals science news coming at you.
Science.
Thank you, little yeast, for your ability to ferment. We appreciate your powers of goodness. Oh, science.
Here's an inside tip to anybody who is interested in working in biomedical field manufacturing, getting one of those cool jobs. There's the company Genentech that just got bought by Roche. They have hired more people to do their fermentations of their drugs who were previously working for brewing companies. I mean, there's a whole list. I know at least a dozen people working over there who got their start making beer. And the process of making beer is so similar to that of producing the pharmaceuticals of today in the fermentation processes. That's a great way. If that's what your career goal is, I highly suggest you go take some classes while you're still at university on brewing. Get yourself a job working somewhere doing brewing, or pick it up as a hobby, and really illustrate your interest in the brewing process when you go in for your job interview. Because everybody I know who's a brewer, it's like their farm league. It's like the farm league for manufacturing pharmaceuticals is brewing.
You got a story, dude?
Me? No, I'm all out. That was it. What do I got? Oh,
give me a story. Come on.
So I was sort of ruminating about a couple of what creatures might make it in the new global warming a while ago. This is real quick. It's just a couple of them that were picked out of this study in 2008 that was showing that just a few degrees of Fahrenheit in the Antarctic waters could make them much more hospitable to sharks that haven't lived there for about 40 million years. Also, this is in the Miocene area, which I think is that 65 million years ago? I can't remember. Is that the 40 million years ago mark? was another time where we had like the really hot ages, and sharks back then were larger, much larger than they are today. So the sharks will really thrive in the oceans of global warming. A couple of the others, starfish. Starfish, they could grow much faster in water with warmer temperatures and higher carbon dioxide levels, so that you could end up with much larger, more beautiful starfish than you have now. And also more jellyfish. Jellyfish probably like it quite a bit. Maybe not going to be so good for clams and mussels and other things that are preyed upon by the starfish and such. But yeah, also algae. We'll have more toxic algae.
More toxic algae?
That's one of the ones that toxic algal blooms.
Oh,
apparently
right.
Really well. Some of the simpler species, they think it'll be a less complex ecosystem. That means basically we're going to lose a lot of the life forms, but microbes should flourish, jellyfish, algal blooms, and then sharks. Some more sharks. More sharks. Woo!
That's going to make Shark Week even more exciting.
What's Shark Week?
That's right.
What's Shark Week?
Shark Week? Nothing. Never mind. Inside baseball. Sorry. Didn't mean to pull it on you.
Baseball?
Never mind.
What's baseball?
Allie, tell me about culture wiring the brain.
I guess Justin doesn't know a lot about this culture, but this story talks about how different cultures actually wire the brain differently. So it's not just your tendencies or whatever. It's the way your brain actually is formed and the connections that are in your brain that come out of culture. And specifically, they're looking at East Asian and Westerners versus Easterners, basically, in the study. And they found that indeed there is a difference. And specifically, they were looking at, overall, they were looking at the way that the collectivist nature of East Asian cultures versus the individualistic way of Western cultures, and the way that affects the brain and behavior. And they found that East Asians tend to process information in a more global way, whereas Westerners tend to focus on like individual objects. And they did a study tracking participants' eye movements. I guess they used American and Japanese volunteers, and they did a experiment tracking eye movements, which showed that Westerners spend more time looking at focal objects, whereas I guess in this one it was Chinese volunteers looked more at the background. And then in another one, they looked at the way that people were processing facial information, and they showed that their research showed that East Asians focused more on the central region of the faces, whereas Westerners looked more broadly, focusing on both the eyes and the mouth. So that one is a little less clear of how that makes sense.
It's almost sort of the same thing as the other, looking at sort of taking the whole picture as representing the thing versus in the Western culture, it's okay, I've got to zero in on eyes, I got to zero in on mouth, because that's where my information is going to come from, those specific point features, and not the general the general picture.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
They did this. They also, I think, as I recall, were looking at something like a painting as a way to illustrate this. You take a painting, and when you walk away from that and tell what the painting was, Westerners will pick out a couple of specific things, like I saw a fish in there, it had blue scales, its eye looked a little reddish, and the Eastern will sort of give you more impression. There's sky, there's land, there's some water, fish in the water, but maybe not as much detail about any one specific thing in the painting.
Yeah, it says that pictures of fish swimming.
Yeah, I think something else about this study goes into something Justin reported on a few weeks ago about how we have a Western bias in all of our psychology and our cognitive psychology, cognitive neuroscience studies, and that the majority of the people that have been studied are Westerners, and we're missing out on. Yeah, we're missing out on the East Asians, on Africans, on on so many races, on so many different possibilities for how, like this study shows, how culture actually is a part of determining how your brain is set up, the features, the things that you pay attention to, and how that really ties in, and how it's an interplay, and you can't really have one without the other.
Yeah, and that's interesting too to think about whether, it says it's culture, but then is it actually in their genes somehow too that they develop that way? Because it's, sort of evolved.
Probably not. Probably not. And the reason is much of what makes society the influential society of being in the United States has been crafted by psychologists. I mean, all of our marketing, all of our advertising, all of those, a lot of the values that we have as American citizens were created by psychologists for advertising, for media, for political reasons, for, to sort of control our society.
Wait, the value, did you just say the values that we have been created by psychologists for advertising, through advertising?
Well, no, they were. I mean, it was a. Advertising was a big part of it. Absolutely. If you look at the history of Freudian psychology in the United States, the influence is tremendous. It was that big shift into creating a safe and sane public through psychology. Absolutely, it was used at every level of influence, from marketing to politics to how we perceived the communist threat and everything else. And it made a nice organized society. But our value system here is created by this sort of decisions about what psychological norm was, and how basically the assumption was that all human beings are completely irrational, and the only way to make them rational is to give them benchmarks for that and give them the feeling of belonging to or improving themselves. Or if you consume products that make you feel good, you will be more confident, you will go out into the world and be that better citizen. And to create that, they had to give you a product for you to buy that would instill this, that, or the other feeling. If you look through the history of psychology, most of it has been used really in advertising and in politics, because that's who really consults heavily to find out the psychology of the human being. It's not the mental health that really sparked the psychological movement in this country. It was marketing, advertising, politics. It was
I would love to get responses from psychology majors, people who are into psychology, and find out what people think about, because I cannot respond to this in a knowledgeable way. I can't argue with you on this. I don't know. I'd love to argue with you on it, but I'd love to debate you, but I don't have the information. So if anybody wants to, give us your thoughts on Justin's ideas here, send us an email. Send me an email, Kirsten@thisweekinscience.com, and I'll try and read them on the show next week. It'd be great to get a little debate going. I think it would be fun. I do think so. But moving on up to the robot domination side. Moving on up.
Bring it.
Is it really This Week in World Domination if the robots are still inside a computer? Is it? That's my question. Researchers are working on a new type of artificial life form that they call avidians. And avidians, according to this New Scientist article, they are they're not live. They're not alive in the normal sense. They're not bacteria, microbes of any form. They're not even a life form that's been found on another planet. They are they live in computers at Michigan State University, and they have been created to replicate within a computer world that has been designed for them. And they have particular sets of instructions that are the basis for their growth, their activity, which you could kind of say is their DNA. And they compete within the environment for not really food, but more processing time, the ability to process more and improve their code to maybe move move on and evolve into a better form within this computer environment. And so at the 12th Annual International Conference on Artificial Life in Odense, Denmark, scientist Robert Pennock of MSU is going to present the findings of these Avidian experiments. And they've done a few experiments. In one early experiment, Laura Grabowski, she's now at the University of Texas Pan American in Edinburgh. She set up a food gradient in a computer environment that had a grid of cells, and at the bottom end in the first generation, she placed a bunch of these Avidians, and then the cell above had more food or more of this processing time for them. They're like, I want to get there, but how do I get there? They don't really know how to get there. So the computer, these Avidians, had to evolve the ability to move from one cell to the next, and it took them about 100 generations of computer living and dying artificially to be able to move to the next cell that had more energy, more food, more processing time. And they found over time that the descendants were able to follow the food gradient to its source. Now, this was published in 2009. More recently, they have set non-evolved Avidians on what they call a treasure hunt. And the Avidians, each cell had a code that told the Avidians that landed there where they should turn, how they should move to get more food. And some of the cells told them to do it over again. So it was, if an Avidian moved into the cell, it would be there and turn according to what the cell told it to do. And then some of the cells would say, do it again. So they'd have to turn more and change their behavior. And the Avidians, actually, the environment, what Grabowski says is the environment sets up selective pressures so organisms are forced to come up with some kind of memory use, which is in fact what they do. And Fred Dyer at MSU, who's a zoologist, he said that Laura's work suggests that the evolution of an ability to solve simple navigational problems depends on first evolving a simple short-term memory, and this in digital organisms that still don't exhibit something you would call learning. So in terms of artificial life and artificial intelligence, this is coming from the bottom up, where the environment is actually determining the development of the memory, of the abilities of the life form, this artificial life form, to actually survive and do better in their environment. And so they're hoping that research like this is going to allow them to be able to evolve, to learn more about the processes of evolution, how evolution happens, how it affects actual organisms, and how organisms have evolved complex brains like we have, and be able to move towards actually creating artificial brains, which I think is very exciting. And all of this has come, there's this little sidebar in the New Scientist article, all of this has come from like early games in the 1980s where computer programmers created programs to beat each other, and then the programs started changing within the storage areas that they had. They processed and eventually created viruses, and so this all came from the 1980s. Programmer versus programmer creating program to beat program, and those programs eventually evolved into viruses and what we now detest on our computers. But it could become even more complex. It could be that those early days of computer programmer games could actually lead to artificial intelligence, artificial life.
Whoa.
Whoa, wow. It's crazy. But is it going to be world robot domination if it's inside a computer? I think so.
Yeah, that's where it's got to start. Intelligent computer.
Yeah. The intelligent. Ha ha ha. Anyway, you got any more stories, Justin?
Okay, I got this one here that I just printed. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
SpongeBob. No. What? Who?
Yeah, that's
what?
you. There's a genome that is connecting the dots between amphimedon animal descendants. The simple sponge. The simple sponge can reveal much about life on Earth. And researchers who have sequenced the genome of one of the SpongeBobs under the sea there are learning just how common the roots are. So, in the paper published online this week in the journal Nature, Rice University's Nicholas Putnam is among a group of scientists who has established a draft genome sequence for Amphimedon queenslandica. So I'm assuming this is an Australian sponge. It is found off the coast of Australia. Okay, there you go. So the genome is helping evolutionary biologists connect the dots as they look for DNA sequences shared by metazoans and multicelled animals. It says here, sponges are an ancient group with fossils dating back at least 650 million years. They are thought to have been the first group of animals to branch from all the others. Because I think before then it was there was like different colored algae. Like there wasn't a whole lot of, but this is the first animal to branch off from the others. Wow, we come from sponges?
Yeah, that's awesome. Very simple organisms.
Yeah, therefore genes shared by sponges and other animals must have been present in the common ancestor for all metazoans. This ancestor would have evolved mechanisms to coordinate cell division, growth, specialization, adhesion, and death. This suggests that early sponges already had a developmental set of tools similar to those in metazoans today. What is exciting is the new things we're learning about animal evolution, says Putnam, who got involved with the project while working for the Department of Energy's Joint Genome Institute back in 2006. For example, sponges have embryos, and having the genome helps us look at how they develop and make specific connections to developmental pathways in other animals. It's the kind of thing that will lead to much clearer understanding of what the very first metazoans looked like. That distant ancestor may well have looked like a sponge. And for the paper, Putnam helped compare Amphimedon's draft genome with 13 other complete animal genomes, including a selection of invertebrates, as well as a chona flagellate, whatever that is. Researchers looked at...
Flagellate?
Flagellate.
Choanoflagellate, yeah.
A choanoflagellate. Okay, there it is. We can now say that the large-scale patterns of genome organization we've seen conserved in other animal groups came from the very root of the animal tree. And Putnam goes on to say, the focus of my research is to understand whether patterns that have been around for 1 billion years have some particular function, or if they're hanging around because not enough time has gone by to erase them.
Right.
What is missing is also interesting. He says the ancestral patterns of genome organization common to other creatures is absent from certain arthropods and vertebrates that include the likes of centipedes and lobsters and nematodes. If the missing pattern is neutral, you'd say that somewhere along the history of these groups, the rate of evolutionary change sped up enough to break the connection. If it's functional, then somehow those groups overcame whatever constraint is on it in other lineages. Also puzzling is why the Amphimedon shares key developmental genes with a diverse set of metazoans. Its basic structure hasn't changed in 600 million years. Given the same root, researchers wonder why it doesn't evolve more radically. And they're working to identify the differences that gave rise to nerve cells and the other things that really are in other creatures but do not exist in sponges.
Right.
So thankfully we live on a planet where really life can proceed unabated for millions and millions of years, and we have these sort of ancestral roots still out there in the oceans.
Yeah, I definitely think that I like studies like this because it gives us a sense of what is necessary for life, and what are the things that everything is based on? What does everything have? So these are all very interesting. This is all very interesting. I believe these droids are the droids you're looking for. Yeah. So anyway, I think we need to wrap it up. I'd like to thank everyone for watching. On next week's show, it's going to be more science news. Hopefully, we'll have a little minion mailbag from people telling us what they think about Justin's ideas on psychology and advertising leading our value system. It's very interesting.
We don't need
to go into it. We don't need to go into it anymore. You've already gone into it. It's the end of the show. Shout outs.
I've got a minion mailbag.
Yeah, no, it's not on. No, we're out of time.
This is important.
I'd love it. Yeah, I'm sure it's very important. You didn't get it into the schedule.
Look in the skies in the media.
Sorry, we're out of time, dude. I'd like to thank everyone for writing in. It's been an awesome week of emails. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to everyone's stories. Makes me sad. Ed Dyer, you sent in so many stories, and I just want to do a show every day so that I can cover all the stories you send in. Michael S., Monkey, Melissa, thank you so much. Gord McLeod, Peter Frazier, Artyom, everyone who commented on the twist.org website. We do have a website where you can now make comments on the shows that you listen to, and actually respond to specific issues about each show on our website. So you can go to twist.org and do that. Yeah, it's awesome. Jess Mason, Tony Wang, you know who you are. Thanks so much for writing in. We do appreciate all of your letters and your stories that you send us for funness.
Yes, and we hope you enjoyed the show. We are available as a podcast. Just Google us, Google This Week in Science in the iTunes directory, and we'll pop right up there. You can also get Twis on your Android. Look for Twis for Droid. And it's there in the Android marketplace, and I think it only costs $1.
No, it's free.
It's free?
It's free.
We're giving this show is free?
Yes. Totally free.
People tune in, we don't charge them anything, they just get to listen and learn about science and stuff?
Yep, on your phone, on your computer, on your iPod, on your whatever you listen to things on. Yes. And for more information on anything you've heard here today, the show notes are going to be available on our website, which is www.twis.org, twist.org. And you can email us. Email me at kirsten@thisweekinscience.com or justin@thisweekinscience.com. I'm going to get Justin his email access this week, I promise.
Yeah, I'm not being rude. Normally I'd respond to every single email that I get normally. If you can also contact us on the Twitter, we're at Dr. Kiki or at JacksonFly, available for comments and stuff there. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, or if you have an insider stock tip that might help me out tomorrow morning, give us your feedback. Please let us know.
That's right. And we will be back here next week, next Thursday, next Tuesday, wherever it is you listen to us. And we hope you will join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from today's show, remember,